Yeah, people shaking their heads or shrugging their shoulders. Middle of winter. Amy is on. Mark and Jill. Okay, I think, all right, Angie is joining. We'll add people as we need to because we want to make sure. I've got a whole bunch of questions. And I'm sure other people have been thinking too. We are so happy to have our presenters today. We are very fortunate to have people that are willing to take time for our lake association. So, but I also realize it's a pretty good use of time in the sense that you get to meet with a lot of people in the public and you can do it from your office. So with that, I think everybody is on. It can be Jim Pappas. We've got a good sized crew here. So this is going to be a little bit different because it's going to be Q&A. And I've come up with a whole bunch of questions based on the original questionnaire, as well as some other questions that have been submitted. Don't let that stop you because I'm sure you might have some follow-up questions and we should take those as well as new questions. So let me introduce our presenters. Greg Schaefer has been in law enforcement for about 23 years, 21 years with the city of Cumberland, and about 2 years with Burnett County as our recreational deputy. Greg's responsibilities include boat patrol, snowmobile patrol, UTV, ATV patrol, married with 5 children, enjoys fishing, hunting, and chasing grouse with his 2 dogs in the fall. Dustin Gabrielson is the conservation warden for the Wisconsin DNR. He's been assigned to the Webster Field Station, serving Burnett County, which means east of Wisconsin Highway 35. So obviously our area since 2013. Tom Boisvert, you met him, well, this will be like the 5th time. We're very fortunate. He's our AIS Burnett County coordinator. And what I think we'll learn from Tom is he also has some enforcement responsibilities in his role. So with that, I'm going to let the presenters kind of decide who's going to answer the question 1 or 2 or 3. And Dave Ferris already warned me that he might chime in sometime. So we're all good to go? Okay. Could you please explain the concept of the complaint-driven approach to recreational concerns?
Yeah, so basically, we go to where the complaints are. We do also go to other lakes or in areas that we don't have the complaints. But the majority of the time with me and Dustin are working rec patrol. If there's a ton of complaints, that's where we do the majority of our patrol area or enforcement for that time. And it's not that we don't go to other areas, but we are basically complaint driven. The more complaints that we get, that's where we go.
With that, we can have a plan on a weekend. We're going to go hit XYZ lakes. But being that there's 1 or at best probably 2 of us that can cover that area, as soon as you get a complaint that comes in, that does push you to that area to go address that complaint. So, if we don't have complaints coming in that day, if, there's no phone calls generated, we're free to do what we want to do. But as soon as that complaint comes in, typically we always try to head that way.
I know as a person who knows lots of people where you live on the lake, there's a real reluctancy to complain. Well, how can you help us realize that if we want to have you involved, we have to make a phone call? Can you help us become more okay with that?
Yeah.
Well, you like the sheriff's department, you can call and just remain anonymous. Say, hey, this is what's going on in this area. You don't have to give your name.
On the DNR side of things, we do have a tip hotline, 1-800-TIP-WDNR. That line goes through our dispatch that's located in Madison. They take the complaint, and that is statutorily protected to to consider the person that is giving that complaint. And then that dispatch in Madison will then send that complaint out to whatever warden is responsible for that area. If it happens to be a weekend that I'm off, they then get a hold of the next closest warden. So if it is something that's ongoing that needs to be addressed, even if I'm off, seeing how I'm the only warden that covers that area, if it's a serious enough complaint, they'll pull someone from another county to come up and look at it.
Okay. Can you give us, how do you spend a typical day? I know there's no such thing, but generally, all three of you.
So
Gotcha.
basically, go ahead, Dustin.
During the week, you're going to find in the office a little more catching up from the previous weekend, whether that's just administrative duties in the office, closing out complaints. That's when we write our citations and stuff. But we try to get in the field as much as possible. On any weekend that we're working, it's pretty much 100% of the time in the field, patrolling on the lakes, on the ATV trails, you name it, wherever, usually depending on the time of year. And for us, as the seasons change, what we're enforcing typically changes as well. So,
Greg and Tom?
So basically for me though, I'll call Dustin a couple days in ahead and say, hey, what's your plan for this? I think we should go do this. So basically we'll start out, I usually work from on the weekends, Thursday through Sunday are my normal rec hours for the sheriff's department. I can pick my hours whenever I want to work them. We do some early mornings, not super early, but 8, 9 o'clock we'll do the ATVs or boats, depending on what season it is. And we usually go till 6, 7 o'clock at night. But if it's a slow night, then we cut out early.
Tom?
So I don't really have enforcement abilities like the other two do. But basically all I wanted to say on this call is that if there is an aquatic invasive species violation or something like that we see at a boat landing, usually lake associations will send those to myself or Dave first. And then we either filter those out and see if it's appropriate to send that to our county department or to the DNR.
What are the 3 biggest areas that you ticket? Let's start. Go ahead, Dustin.
I would say again, as with my
Okay. Yeah, would you go ahead and start?
that will change seasonally, but in the summer, and yes, there's a trend right now in my county that has changed in the 8 or so years that I've been here. When I first got here, boating was my busiest summer enforcement category, and I was patrolling on the water way more. In the last couple of years, ATV traffic has significantly grown, which caused us to sit on the ATV trails a lot more. But for sure, it's ATVs in the summertime. Boating / fishing would be our next enforcement category there. Those two probably go hand in hand, but that's what our typical summers go with.
Greg?
So Mike, I just got to clarify. So our 3 biggest areas that we're enforcing, such as the citations that we're giving, is that the kind of the question? So again, depending on the season, but mainly ATVs, UTVs, the biggest thing that we're writing tickets for now is off-trail use, non-registration, non-residents that do not have trail passes. We've wrote probably 10 or so careless operations. We've seen from the previous year to this summer, we've seen an uptick in ATV crashes, OWIs. I think we've wrote maybe 4 or 5 between me and Dustin. We've probably had 6 or 7 crashes, but those are the big things for ATVs, UTVs. Boat enforcement's going to be non-registration, no wake zones, stuff like that. I'll be honest, I had about 300 and some hours in the ATV and about 90 hours in the boat. Again, I go where our complaints are. That's just why I have way more hours in the ATV.
Okay. Is there particular information that you would want to share with us? You know, we're Des Moines Lake and the surrounding area there. Is there anything you'd like for us to know in terms of regulations and safety?
I mean, I would just make sure that you familiarize yourself with the basic laws of whatever sport you're enjoying, whether it's boating, ATVing. That's the big thing. I mean, ignorance isn't an excuse to disobey the law. I mean, we didn't know that, and that's the excuse we get all the time. And we always tell them, make sure you know what the basic laws are to operate, whether it's a jet ski. That's the big thing. Just make sure you're familiarized with the law and the sport you're doing.
Dustin?
Yeah, I'd mimic what Greg said. Educating yourselves. We have a lot of safety classes, which our younger folks are taking these days. But our educated folks are our safest people in the field. They know the laws. They know the issues that we've been seeing out there because we stress that in our classes. So, yeah, education.
Okay. Is there a maximum speed limit for boats? Well, I'll do all separately. Boats, jet skis, snowmobiles, ATVs.
Boats and jet skis, there is no speed limit per se, but there is, with everything, there's always something that's reasonable. You can have, if your actions, because of how close you come to someone, obviously there's rules of how close you can come to someone when you are going over the speed of slowing a wake in a boat. But you can't create a hazardous wake that would, cause injury or recklessly endanger someone. ATVs, there are a lot of speed limits in the county. 30 miles an hour would be the county's fastest speed limit, but depending on the roadway that you're on, that speed could change from 10 miles an hour, 20, 25 to 30. Snowmobiles do not have a daytime speed limit, but it's also what's reasonable. And, obviously where are they operating and how fast in that situation. And during the hours of darkness, snowmobiles have a speed limit of 55 miles per hour.
Okay. I know you know that we have a local ordinance. We have wake hours on our lake. 10 o'clock, before 10, after 5, there's a no wake. We all know that, and I've heard this on a lot of the questionnaires, we like that. I'm not saying this whole group here that you're talking to, we've never really talked about it, but we like that. I got an email today from someone said, can they help us make it like 11 to 5? So, it's a big issue. And I also know I get people telling me that it's, people are not always following it. So do you enforce our local regulation on wake hours?
I do not. That is your township ordinance, where I am bound by state statute.
Okay.
I
Greg?
basically do county ordinances or state laws. That's all I can do.
Okay, can you help us with what do we do? What have you said? Because I know you've had this question before.
I think in the past, prior to me being here, I heard that Webb Lake had a constable of sorts, a township rec officer who was able to enforce that local ordinance. As far as I know, that would be your best option, to have someone patrol and be able to enforce that town ordinance.
Greg, you want to add anything?
That's it. The only way you'd be able to do it is if somebody that worked for the township that would able to do it, or if the town chairman appointed somebody to do it. But then the other thing that would be is I don't know where it would be heard, if you'd have to have your own court system, like a municipal court, or if you could send it to county court. Because to my knowledge, there is no county ordinances for no wake zones or certain times, I guess I would say, in the county.
Is there anything else like this besides, we're all aware of the no wake? Is there anything else that is a local ordinance that you don't really enforce?
The county's I think the county's trying to get like a no power loading. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of becoming an issue at some of the boat landings where they power load their boats. But it's gotta be a county ordinance before I could enforce it.
Okay, there may be more questions when we get down with these prepared questions about that. What do you recommend that residents do if they look out on the lake and they see a boat without a spotter, people driving too close to shore, in a reckless manner, all the different ways? Those are pretty common. We've all seen those. Again, is this call the number?
Yeah, you could call the non-emergency number. If you were able to get like the registration off the boat, it's not necessary that we would go give them a ticket, but we would run that registration and go talk to them, say, hey, we got a complaint about your driving, and just see what they say and go from there. But I mean, you got to call when it's going on. I mean, a lot of times we get calls that are like a week or 2 weeks old, and it's like, oh, it's a little late now.
And what I would actually offer a little bit too is what I've always heard from all of the wardens and stuff is whatever documentation you can do, if it's say too close to a dock, get a video of them, get some pictorial evidence, something that these guys can follow up with. And as Greg was saying, call immediately. Don't wait too long, because then it's not good.
Do you get a lot of calls like this?
Yeah, that's what we would see in general. It's when we get these complaints, whether it's boats or ATVs, it's your run-of-the-mill violations. And that's what people call in. I think some of them that we get that are, 1 to 2 weeks after the fact. I think it's sort of what you talked about, where there's a lot of people that are hesitant to call things in. But as they talk to other people about what they hear, it seems like, I think on a lot of lakes, there's one person that doesn't mind calling, and it takes until that complaint gets to that person, and then they make that call for them. So we get it after the fact. And doesn't mean that we get that complaint, we can still come out to the lake after the fact. And, sometimes just having a presence on the lake for a while might do some good. But yeah, right away is definitely the best case as far as us to take care of it.
Any particular regulations where we've had some comments and concern about wave boats?
We've had a lot of complaints about countywide, whether it's loud music or large wakes, but nothing they're doing is illegal about that boat. As long as they're 100 feet from shore, and they're out there, recreating in a normal manner as far as it's wakeboarding or skiing, whatever it is. There's nothing I can do about just operating that sort of boat.
Okay. Greg, anything you would add to that?
And like Dustin said, the boat itself is not illegal. It's just as long as they're following, not too close to shore, other boats, that would be the big thing.
Well, as long as just Dustin, you brought it up, let's talk about loud music outside.
Mhm.
What's the regulation on that?
That would probably fall into the county court. If I probably make a disorderly conduct case, I would assume at some point. But it's gonna, obviously every situation can be different as far as what the levels are. It always changes, but I think you definitely could have a violation there at some point.
Great.
And the other thing with that, to add to it, is loud music at 5 o'clock in the afternoon is a lot different than loud music at 11 o'clock at night. I get it. People want to have their quiet time. I think once you get past that 11 o'clock at night, I'd be like, okay, we're gonna go talk to them, tell them hey, they need to tune it down a little bit. They can't be extremely loud. That's the thing.
So you're kind of putting a pin in an 11 p.m. time. That seems reasonable compromise.
Well, it's not written in stone. I mean, I guess I would honestly say if we get several complaints at 10 o'clock at night, yeah, I would, if I was out and available, I'd go out and say, hey guys, gotta knock it off. We're getting complaints. It's not set in stone, but clearly I would say anything after 11 o'clock would be excessive. I would not want it around my house at all.
Okay. We've had some questions about fireworks. Frequency, debris. Can you give us some insight about fireworks?
As far as the DNR goes, I don't necessarily have the authority to enforce fireworks violations off of state property. There are times that, say there's a bunch of debris that's in the lake, you then have a littering issue. But other than that, I know Greg can probably fill us in a little more. I know the county runs on a lot of fireworks complaints that I'm not getting the calls to go to. But as far as my jurisdiction go, it basically down to litter, what was left after the fact.
And we get several complaints on them. You can call us, we'll go out. But the problem is, it seems like they'll be going off at 10 o'clock at night. And then all of a sudden we're getting calls at 11 o'clock. And it's like, I'll be honest, if we are busy, like it has been the last 2 summers, we prioritize our calls. I mean, we're not going to be chasing down fireworks calls when we got domestics going on. So we do respond to when we're slow. Have we ever given out a ticket? Not since I've been there, because I'll be honest, it's tough to prove who it was. I mean, I can remember the last one I went to, the guy's like, yeah, it's right over here on the corner. So I went to the house that he said it was. And the guy's like, yeah, no, you can see them. They're like 2 miles down the road. And I'm like, okay. So that's the problem, is finding where they're coming from.
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Regarding fireworks last year, we live on the boat landing. And some people came and decided to shoot fireworks off at the boat landing
Hi,
last
this is
year.
Jody. Can I help you?
They were major, big, really big ones. And I did say something to the
There's
people. They
two
were
things going
polite,
on. I just punched out.
and they left. But is that something that we should maybe have called on?
Yeah, you could have called on that. And if somebody was free, they would have went out and spoke to them and said, hey, these are what you can do and what you can't do. And the other thing with that is, each township you'd have to check with, like some townships allow that you get a permit and you can allow light off certain things. And I don't know, I don't think the county has anything like that, but each township has something that they give out, I'm assuming. But I'm not 100% sure on each township, but there's probably a permit you can get, like for like firecrackers, bottle rockets, sparklers, stuff like that.
Yeah, but at the boat landing, is that kosher?
Well, no, again, I don't know, because I haven't seen some of the townships permits. Sometimes they make you say where you're going to light them. I guess I don't know if that's probably not the smartest place in the world to do it. But yeah, I mean, if that's where they said they were going to light it and the township didn't have an issue with it, then I don't know if we'd even enforce it or say anything to them. But we'd come out and talk to them and say, hey, what are you guys doing if it's something they're not supposed to be lighting off?
Yeah, it's doubtful they had a permit, but thank you for your response. Thanks.
Okay, we've kind of talked in general terms about some of these recreational devices and equipment. If you're walking along the road and you see an ATV and you're probably thinking you're walking, so I don't know if they can go 30 or 20 around you. What do you recommend you do at that point? Is it, again, make the phone call? Or if you see them and you're walking by the next restaurant, have any advice?
I'll be honest, knowing in today's day and age, and you see, and I'll be honest, some of the people that are on the ATVs, if you say, and they're half intoxicated or something, you say something, they may want to start something. I would just maybe try to document the registration on it and then give us a call. I mean,
Okay.
just to be on the safe side. You just never know who you're dealing with.
Is there an age for driving a boat or an ATV or anything like that you'd want to share?
Yeah, for each one of these ATVs and boats, there are ages. Boats is anybody born after January 1st of 89 has to have a safety certificate or go through a boating safety course to operate. That's been in place for a while. So you're gonna have people in their 30s now that to legally operate, they have to have been through that course. With ATVs, it's gonna be January 1st of 88. They have to have that course to legally operate. With boats, you're gonna have under 10, no operation. 10 to 11 with a parent with them, they could operate, or with a safety class completion, they could do it. And then over 12, if they finished that safety class, they could operate. On jet skis, anybody under 12 cannot operate them. And if you're over 12, you have to have a boating safety course. Parental accompaniment is not an alternative to the safety course. You have to have the safety course on those jet skis. And then ATV would be the same as far as the ages. If you're, you can be accompanied, and ATVs get into some really muddy water as far as trails. We have small ATV exceptions on trails. They can't operate in the roadway. But without a parent under 16, you cannot operate on a roadway, only on the trail with safety course.
Okay. Let me just make sure that I have the right phone numbers. So if any of us decide we're going to file a complaint, what's the number to call?
The Sheriff's Department's non-emergency number is 715-349-2127.
And again, you can give your name, or you can just say,
Yep.
don't want to give
Yep.
my name.
Yeah, you don't have to give your name. Just say I want to remain anonymous.
Okay. Dustin,
It's 1-800-847-9367, which is 1-800-TIP-WDNR.
okay. 9367. All right. Well, those are sort of the initial questions. Let's open it to the group. Who wants to go first?
I have a couple questions.
Okay, Angie.
To go first. So this might be a question for Dave or Tom.
It's right there.
Are owners allowed to, we have some little bay areas, like, are owners allowed to block people's entrance to that area?
I thought you were trying to touch stuff. Yeah, right.
I don't know.
Just a second, Dave Morley, you're not muted, just so you. Okay, let's go ahead, Angie. Try again, please.
So there's a little, if there's a little bay area on the lake, it's part of the lake, you see it on the map, but people are being blocked from going into that by an owner. Are they allowed to do that? I don't know who knows the answer to that.
I can talk on that one. If it is on the lake, you can't do anything that's going to obstruct navigation.
Okay.
in that
What do you mean by block? I mean, like putting things in there so you can't get in, or just?
Yeah, and on the northwest corner, they've blocked it so that you can't get in. It's very shallow, but you can get in by a kayak. But they don't want you in there. And they've made it very clear they don't want you in there. And I just want to make sure that we are allowed to be in there because it is part of the lake. I know when my husband was younger, he used to fish in there. So I just want to make sure that we have every right to go back in there. And that we weren't breaking any rules, because I don't want to encroach on their property, but I also don't want them to harass me and my kids if we are just, looking at the lake and having fun back there. So I just wanted to see if that was allowed. Sounds like no, it's not allowed to.
No, you can.
You can block it or you can go in?
No, you can't block it. You can go in there.
Okay, so if that issue continues, who do we call to report that to?
Either Dustin or I.
Okay. And then the other question I have is there, and I should know this, but I don't, is there a rule that when you are pulling a skier or a tuber, that you have to go counterclockwise around the lake?
There's not.
I didn't think so. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I think we have that on our website and I was like, I don't know if that's an actual rule, but that's good to know. That's it for me. Thanks.
One other
Well,
thing with that, I heard it came up earlier. We talked about observers, and as of, I think, 2 years ago, they did change that rule. So if you're water skiing now or tubing, you don't need a observer if you have a rear view mirror.
Oh, that's interesting. But you can go whatever direction on the lake. We always go counterclockwise. I was just wondering if that was a rule. Okay, thank you.
I think it's one of those sort of unwritten rules by those that are really, really good skiers.
Well, I think some people, it's just a pet peeve of theirs too, that they think people should go the one way around the lake and it's fine. We don't care either way. We just want to make sure we weren't breaking any rules.
Good question.
I was just gonna say is in northern Wisconsin, we don't have an issue with the whole clockwise, counterclockwise thing. But if you go to southern Wisconsin where the lakes can get ridiculously busy, then you do get some kind of regulations, usually on a local level because of that. But up here, I've never seen any of that because we don't get the busyness.
Sue, I
Other-
have a question.
You bet, Jana.
If we call with a complaint, are those complaints documented and perhaps kept for a while so that if over the course of a summer or a season, there were lots of complaints directed at the same issue, does that help us any if we do call? I mean, should we call even if we don't expect you to come or any result, but is it a good idea to call and at least document the concern for perhaps future reference?
Yeah, every time you call the sheriff's department, there's always a CAD done up, and it basically is what you call in what your complaint is. It'll say the location, the time, and if you want to give your name, you can. If you don't, it won't say a name. It'll just say on this lake at this date and time, this person called in and said this was what's going on, and they are kept on. There's basically once you call in, it's a record for the sheriff's department. And I mean, and that may persuade, if we constantly get the same complaints on the same people, they all probably end up getting a ticket eventually.
Okay, so it might be worth a while to at least register the concern.
Absolutely.
Maybe building a case. Okay.
Yep.
Do you really recommend that? I mean, honestly, I grew up and I was always told to solve something at the lowest common denominator. Go talk to somebody if they're doing something. In this kind of field, are you saying don't do that anymore?
I'll be honest, probably 20 years ago, you could probably go talk to your neighbor and resolve it like normal adults, but you just never know how intoxicated. I'm just going to say that the person that is probably out doing or causing some kind of problem is going to be intoxicated, because I'll be honest, that's what it seems like we run into is there's a level of intoxication. They have a few beers in them and they feel like, I would not recommend going and confronting anybody, especially if it's something that they don't think that they're doing is wrong, like whether it's boating or something. I would not. I would just call it in. That's what we get paid for.
Do you have to have your lights on your ATV on all the time, or can you not have them on in the daytime? Or
Going on any blacktop highway, they have to be on all times on any highway.
but the trails, no.
No, but for safety reasons, now you might as well just have them on. It's not a requirement, but for the highway, it is. Or correct me, Dustin, do they need to be on the trail too?
They don't we might have to, let's double check on that. We did have a very large package of ATV law, UTV law updates mid last summer, and a bunch of them aren't even in the book yet. They will be, I think, on this year's, and that may have changed. Prior to late last summer, midsummer, anytime you're on a roadway, they had to be on, and the trail they didn't. But especially in Burnett County with the dusty conditions that we see, visibility is so low that it's just a really good idea to have those lights on at all times.
Right.
We'll double check with that, and we can get a response back afterwards. That might have I recall something in that rule package that changed, that something might be in there for that on the trails.
What are the rules about being intoxicated while operating a boat or a snowmobile, or are they the same as a motor vehicle?
Yeah, all of our wreck vehicles have a 0.08 limit, the same as in a vehicle. Nothing changes there.
This is Amy Jewers. Have you seen other lake associations? Like, I remember it was either last summer or the summer before last, where Long Lake, their association put up signs saying no wake because the water level was so high, and that wasn't a government or a county enforced, I guess, rule or guideline. And so I'm just wondering if you see other lake associations doing other things like that. Like, you know, things I'm thinking about are the wake boats, just saying the Des Moines Lake Association guidelines, no wake boats, no, you know, like other light noise or white noise after 11, fireworks, you know, could we do something like that? I know it wouldn't be enforceable, but are you seeing other lake associations trying to help create, you know, a safer, quieter, more peaceful environment for the residents?
We are.
I haven't seen a lot of, go ahead, Dustin.
I am seeing a lot of other lakes get on board with the keep wake to mid lake signs, just because we have had pretty extreme high water around the whole county. But other than that, just, you know, trying to lump certain groups out because of a boat they drive and stuff, I have not seen any of that. Not that we haven't had complaints on them, but I haven't seen anyone trying to establish any language that would try to prohibit those type of vehicles off of that lake.
Can I speak up here?
Absolutely.
I know that Bear Lake, Big Bear, has banned wake boats, and I don't know how they were able to do that. I know that they don't have a public landing. I don't know if that's part of how they did that.
I'm assuming if there's no public access and it's a privately owned by whoever lives on the lake, it's probably more of a compliance thing than anything. That their neighbor, everybody that lives on it's an agreement that they don't want it. Because if there was a public landing on the lake, I don't think you'd be able to stop a wake boat from going in there. Right, Dustin?
That is a Voyager Village Lake, correct?
Yeah.
Big Bear? No,
But
Little
not
Bear.
Big Bear. Big Bear is not.
Okay.
It's by the lumberjack.
Let
Everybody
me,
knows.
yeah, let me ask you about rafts. You like to swim to your raft. Can you talk about rafts in a lake?
I can. I did write a couple. I thought these would come. So they do get a little, several regulations for them. So I did write a couple down on them. So when it comes to swim rafts, if it's within 200 feet of shore and is less than 200 square feet, they are allowed. If they get greater than 200 square feet, more than 38 inches high or further than 200 feet from shore, that would be in an area that you would have to apply to have a permit for them. Some of these larger, the trampolines and stuff are larger than 200 square feet, which is roughly 15 feet in radius or diameter. You can have those out during the day. That would be just fine within 200 feet of shore. If you pulled them in at the end of the day on shore, you wouldn't have to worry about a permit process. But if there's something that was anchored in the lake that was over that 200 square feet, that would be something that you'd have to, if you wanted that, you'd have to try and get a permit for it.
Okay, so let me say we have 110 cabins on the lake, and we all decide individually to put out a raft. It will make a very small lake for doing a number of things, but 200 feet is quite a bit of leeway for putting that out. Talk about how you figure it out when you, you know, do you eyeball your property lines when you put out your raft?
Wouldn't be a terrible idea, obviously, when you have your riparian ownership. You do have an idea where it is. You can't, again, you wouldn't want anything or in a way that obstructs navigation, just like we had spoke about earlier, you know, blocking something off. But yeah, it's, I guess, trying to be reasonable, and people can have them. So it's trying to be reasonable, and I guess working well with your neighbors as far as where you put it. So.
Other questions?
It's a raft question then. Can you come between the raft and the shoreline if it's 200 feet out?
You could, as long as you were operating slow no wake.
Okay,
The slow no wake rules, you're going to be within any dock, raft, pier, shore, swimmer. You'd have to be at slow no wake speeds.
okay. Does Long Lake, our neighbors, I know we have someone who's involved in both lakes. Do they have any no wake hours?
As
That
we
I don't
spoke
know.
about, it's not, so it's not something that I guess I would even.
They have the same.
They have the same?
Yeah, it's in, we're in the township.
Okay, so it's every lake in the township of Webb Lake that has that same no wake hours.
That's right. And Fish Lake is a little bit funny because they're 60%, I think, in different in Scott, and only 40% in Webb. And so they opted last year to get rid of that, I think, from what I heard.
I think Nicoboyne is split in 2 townships too.
But it's essentially unenforceable, but we just don't have to tell anybody that.
Yeah.
You know, when you place that sign, I think, and I don't know what you see for compliance, but posting that there, I think a reasonable person on the lake, especially if it's something that the Lake Association says they think the majority want, you're probably going to get a decent amount of compliance out of it. You might not get 100%, obviously, but I think the vast majority of people, I don't know for sure, but, you know, I think if you guys advertise it a little bit, maybe you'd see a considerable amount of compliance with it, enough that you keep your enjoyment and, you know, most of those wants on the lake.
It's pretty good.
And it is an ordinance. We didn't make it up. It is an ordinance. We just don't happen to have a person to staff it right now, but it is on the books. It's just that we don't have a staff person.
This is kind of far-fetched, Dustin and Greg. You know, if as a lake association, and if we got approval from the town board, could we hire somebody for 2 hours on a Saturday? I'm not saying we'd want to, gang. I'm just saying, do we have options?
Yeah, I think you could, as long as the township was in agreement with it. I don't see why there'd be an issue. They would actually be employed by the township and they'd have the authority to do what needs to be enforced.
Is it something that we can police ourselves to a degree? I know I have myself. I do a lot of fishing on Des Moines. And I was out there one morning and they were trying to sell a boat from not Maine's, the people who bought Maine's boat thing. And they were going fast, and I drove my pontoon over to the landing and I said, hey, there's a no wake here until 10 o'clock. And they kind of shrugged it off and left, but I did tell them. I mean, I'm a fisherman. I do a lot of fishing, so I was kind of angry that what they were doing.
Yeah, I mean, you can tell them, I mean, whether that's going to make them comply or not, that's another thing. But yeah, I mean, just because it's a town ordinance, there's not a lot Dustin or I can do about it. we can come up there and say, hey, if we're out there, I'll be honest, when we're on the lakes, the compliance rate is really, really high for some reason. It's just weird. But as soon as we leave, then it's right back to, and I shouldn't say that on every lake. But it just seems like when we're around, we bop in and out of the lakes, compliance as well.
Hey,
Yeah,
Dustin,
I
Greg.
mean, we've told boats, they're going too fast. We just go out of the dock and just tell them slow down, just make some hand gestures, and it's been pretty effective. So, I mean, there's no reason why, if it feels safe to just say something or just make a motion.
Hey, Dustin and Greg, can you talk about it? Obviously, our lake is pretty good on recreation side, and there's been, on weekends, you get a couple of boats go out in the middle, and people are jumping in off the lake and putting a little floaty, attaching it to the boat in that. How is the middle of the lake considered?
There is going to be no requirements for them. I mean, they can go out there and anchor in the middle and put a little floaty out there and jump off. There's no restrictions on that.
I don't mind when they do that. It's when they sit 200 feet from the end of your dock and it echoes right onto your dock and you hear everything they're saying for 3 hours. It's super annoying. I'd rather they go in the middle and then they're out of the way of all the skiers and tubers and they're sort of in the middle.
I agree 100%, Angie. I'm glad you said that. Yeah, I'm with you.
Well, that's why I'm kind of thinking, like, if we can work up some lake association guidelines, like if they're not laws or not rules, whatever, but just to keep our environment more enjoyable, like if that's something that we can just either put on our website or disseminate out to the different cabins and homes, or a wish list, it doesn't have to be rules and laws, but these are the things that the people that don't live on the lake, or maybe they're just not thinking about it, or they're visiting, or whatever else, that we can kind of help make it a nicer environment than it
And I think
already is.
that would be a great idea, is especially like if you have cabins that are rental cabins, if you can get them to give to the people that are visiting, that would help you tremendously. Because I'll be honest, 90% of these people that are coming up here do not have a clue what the regulations and what they can and cannot do. I mean, education is the biggest part of this, the whole thing.
Other questions? Oh, I guess the last question I have you been on our lake recently?
I was on that last weekend. I sat there for probably a couple hours working snowmobile enforcement. Last weekend was a statewide initiative. Start smart before you start, or something along those lines, for snowmobile. So it was just a statewide concentrated effort for snowmobile enforcement. So I was there quite often last weekend.
I haven't been out doing any rec yet. I've been filling some road shifts, but this weekend I will start back to my regular rec hours.
Okay.
Say, Dustin, a question for you. Is there with snowmobiles, I mean, I know a lot of them are putting the cans or bottles on there, they get to be quite loud. Is there a decibel level or something that says you can't put those on, or they can't be that loud?
There is. I did talk to several on the long trails on Long Lake when I talked to them last weekend about that same issue. But there is, I believe the statewide limit is 88 decibels. We can test that with a sound meter and issue citations for that. Or another route we could do is, if we see a loud sled, it's illegal to alter a snowmobile to make it any louder than it was when it was stock. So that is another violation. So if they admit they put a can on it and made the machine any louder than it used to be, that in itself is a separate violation.
And due to the cost of the decibel meters, it's easier to write the second tech that Dustin was talking about, that they made it louder than it was from the manufacturer. 'Cause the sound meters are like, they're very expensive. The sheriff's department doesn't have one because they're like $3,000.
You know, I just did think of another question, and it has to do with a new topic, hunting. I'm often outside and I hear guns going off. Is there any advice on that?
Yeah, so in hunting, I guess in the lake environment, or I guess any place where there's a lot of residences, you cannot discharge a firearm within 100 yards of a house that's devoted to human occupancy on land that you don't own. So I guess if you own the land, there's that buffer isn't there. If you're on your own land, you could discharge a firearm very close to your neighbor's house, as long as it's your land, and it was a safe shot. But if, say, someone's there that, you know, is a guest on that property, they've just given permission to hunt there, they need to be 100 yards away from any other dwelling before they can fire that firearm without permission from the people around them.
Okay, thank you.
As far as just, you know, obviously we're in Burnett County, there is a lot of hunting, legal hunting that goes on, but if there's any concerns on the lake, that'd definitely be something you could call about.
Okay. I'm not seeing any more questions coming at this point. So with that, Dustin and Greg, really, thank you for taking the time, and we really appreciate it. You see the hands clapping there for your time, and now we know how to get a hold of you. So thank you. And of course, Tom, thank you for 5 meetings, and Dave Ferris, the same. You're welcome to stay on. We're going to debrief our conversation with you, and then we're going to move on to some other topics. So with that, it's up to you. If you need to go, that's fine, or you can stay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, gang. What's the major takeaways you've gotten from this conversation?
I want to hire a constable.
What do you think? How about some other comments?
Well, I was surprised at how much ownership or legal rules the township has versus the police and the DNR has. Everything those two kind of related seem to gear back towards the township.
How about reaction to Jana's comment?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is, hi. I've been on and off because I'm at work still, but I didn't know what was the comment?
Our no wake practice is a
Okay.
local regulation, and they don't enforce anything that's local.
Okay, yeah, I wanted to, there's quite a few people on. I absolutely want to, I am a person that has a wakeboard boat that we brought with us from being on a different lake that was bigger. I have all older children. I have to say, last summer, we didn't even go through a tank of gas. That's how often we're not out there. And my kids have been told to stay away from the shorelines to minimize the amount of waves they're hitting. We also have other family members on the lake that are big skiers, and we very much are conscious of the fact that people that are teaching little kids how to ski don't need to get hit by a wave that's up to their waist. We have never put all the ballast in our boat. We purposely don't, to try to be conscientious of the rest of the lake. But I guess I would like people to take into consideration, my boat might be out there for an hour a weekend. There are people that are spending 8 hours pulling tubers, making waves. So there's a little bit of an argument to made how much damage is actually my boat doing compared to people that are out there pulling tubes nonstop. From being on the lake over 50 years, I cannot believe the amount of tubing traffic we get on weekends. It is not a skiing lake anymore. It's like even unsafe at times to take little kids out skiing because the amount of tubing traffic. If there was anything that I would encourage reducing, it would be tubing hours. I mean, it is just nonstop, and people are purposely making waves and chopping up the water. It's not as much of a recreation as far as exercise and skill. And it's frustrating for people that really believe in the sport of water skiing. So I just wanted to get it out there. I mean, this is an open forum. I please, if anybody ever sees anyone operating my boat that they don't feel is in a conscientious manner, please approach me. I mean, my kids are all adults. They've been around water their whole life. I hate to be put in the cube of wakeboard boats because, like I said, mine is just not even out there that much. I'm on the north end of the lake between Greg and Dennis. And like I said, we did not go through a full tank of gas this whole summer. They're all getting old. They don't want to jump anymore. But
Okay.
so
Go ahead.
I mean, so I must have missed it. Do they want to reduce the amount of hours that people can drive fast, or is it take it away?
No, the question is, we don't have a constable or a rec officer that will enforce our local wake hours. So the question is, are we interested at some point? I don't even know if we would get approval, but would you want to hire somebody to occasionally, enforce the rules around our lake if we had somebody that could do it legally? That's the question.
Yeah,
It wasn't really about the kinds of.
Okay. Yeah, I too have gone out and approached people and told them this is that there are laws in this lake, that you can't go fast. I was trying to speak up while there were still those gentlemen on the phone and ask them, is there anything we can do to minimize the amount of trailers that are being parked in the additional boats that get put on our lakes on weekends? I mean, I know that that's how some of the city lakes limit how many extra boats are in the lake. They only have so many parking spots. I have gone down there to try to get a boat in the lake and you can't even back in there. They have so many trailers parked. So do we have any control of that?
Well, I know the landing is owned by the town board. So I don't know if they have any rules or not, but let me open it up to other people to respond to any of those concerns.
Thanks for taking my questions.
You bet.
I can add, maybe I'm still stuck here, so I'm going to add a little bit on it. Of course, I want to be with you guys, Anyway, as far as I know, and definitely Dustin would be the guy to talk to on that, there isn't any limitation on the amount of boats on a lake, unless, again, there could be some local ordinance, but I'm not aware of anything like that. As far as being the trailers and stuff on the landing, I suspect there isn't an issue there. However, if they are blocking, which those are public roads, they are public town roads, if there's road is being blocked, then that is a significant safety issue. So that would be something that you could complain to the sheriff's department on and say, hey, the roads are blocked, I need to get down here, kind of thing. But that, as far as I know, would be the only thing. And I may not be completely correct.
Okay, Mark, are you still on? Mark Michael?
Yep.
What do you see in terms of trailers?
I just said to Jill just a few seconds ago, I've never seen a problem down there where it's been blocked off. And we're there all the time, and people are pretty considerate about getting over to the sides.
Okay.
I think one of the things I'm aware of is that, there's these lots that are being sold that aren't on the lake. You're seeing a lot of that where people are putting up.
I'm punched out, but I'm on a Zoom call.
What's up? People are putting up sheds and they come to different lakes for the day, for the afternoon. And they are some of the ones I think that don't have a vested interest or ownership on the lake. And they're the ones that are using the lake that we're seeing some of these infractions. I think that's what's going on to a certain extent.
Okay. Again, I'm going to ask the question. What do you think? Or is it compelling enough to at least put on a list to consider having a little more actual enforcement? Now, there'd be a lot of work to that.
Well, you know, it's a township issue, and the town chairman eliminated the constable because of an economic issue. So I would pose the question, how many of you vote in the town of Webb Lake? That's where a lot of your voice really could be heard.
Okay, other thoughts? We're not going to solve it today, just discuss it.
Well, we're working on a list of people that are going to be helping, making sure that the boats are spraying down before they go in and when they come out. So if the issue is parking, or if the issue is no wake, you know, they're violating the no wake or whatever, maybe that's the point of, and it's usually on the weekends, right? For the most part, except for holiday weeks like the 4th of July. But maybe that person could be, you know, if we had a flyer made up with these, you know, or if we had a little sign about our guidelines or something like that. I know we're working on a new sign at the end of the boat launch, but that could just be a point of education that would then help everybody on the lake versus, you know, and that's the point of entry and leaving. So when they come in, it could just be part of the protocol. I know Mark's working on that, that we share that with these voters that are visiting.
Okay. All right, well, just, you know, feel free to keep thinking about that, email, call, whatever. We'll see where that is. There's a few more things here to go through. We've had 5 Zoom meetings on various topics, so we're getting some grassroots kinds of potential projects. We do have a Building Our Community group, and I'd like for them to spend a little time and update you on various topics. Ryan and Dan, I know you're on. You want to take over?
Yeah, sure. This is Ryan here. Dan, you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Ryan. Go ahead, because I know you got a meeting at 5. Why don't you go first?
Yeah, it'll be a little tight for me. I do have a little kind of update here. We had one of our volunteers on the communications committee, Anne, who was on this call along with her husband. They were up last weekend and were great, helpful enough to take photographs of our sign. Katie, I'm going to try to share our my screen right now if I can.
You should be able to.
Okay.
There we go. Cool.
And can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay, so here is our sign. As most of you guys know, it is in pretty rough condition. It's got quite a bit of a lean to it. It has been, I believe, set back up several times by, I believe, Jeff Romachuk or the Michaels. As you can also see, there's quite a bit of rot going on the 4x8 piece of plywood. That plywood is definitely non-repairable. The frame itself, we would probably look to mimic some bracing that the Long Lake sign has. If you can imagine a 4x8 piece of plywood taking on 30 or 40 mile per hour winds without that bracing, it probably led to several of the downings of that sign. So we've discussed this as a committee over email. We're basically recommending that we replace the sign and the frame, considering the condition of both of them. We have a meeting next week to discuss kind of moving forward with getting quotes and bids, and we're definitely open to anyone's suggestions on a sign maker or a volunteer that could help us with this. You can contact either myself, Dan, or Sue, and we can get you guys into our little meeting. Any questions on that?
The only thing I would add, and the team knows this, is that we had to make a stop to the town board, and they are going to bring it up at the meeting in February. I think it should be perfunctory, but I'll keep you posted if there seems to be some issue. Dave Ferris put me onto this because it is on, the boat landing is owned by the township. So I'm glad we made that stop.
Excellent. Yep. That we'll get as much preliminary work done, but obviously we won't pull triggers until we get that official permitting and or permission from obviously who owns the land. So, okay. And then secondly, we've been working on the getting our website going, and basically it's live. Some of you have been looking at it. Some of you have signed up for it. I know our volunteer committee has. We've had suggestions to have a lake directory, which is currently working on the website for those that are members of it. The website address is DesMoinesLake.org. It is the address that was previously used back in 2013 for the last website. The focus of our work so far has been making sure the website works on like a lot of devices. You know, oftentimes you don't have a desktop and you're looking at a website and it's very hard to read some of the things that are going on. So it looks good across multiple devices. There is an area on there for member registration, which will help us centralize the lake residents and members of the association. With that said, like I did say, the lake directory right here is something that you can sign up for. It's not something that everyone has to join if they don't want to. You can see that there's an option to disable the visibility on the directory. And you can also choose how you want your directory name displayed, considering we have numerous different situations with multiple owners of a cabin, a single owner, partners, spouses, things like that. You can choose how your name is displayed in the directory. So that is where we are at today with the website. I'll talk further with Sue and the rest of the volunteer committee on getting the URL sent out to our email list and getting people going on that. One last thing is that we are just getting the ball rolling on accepting website payments, which will help us out with membership dues and making it a little bit easier. Sue might be talking about something to do with dues here, and I'll anyone have any questions in terms of the website? Awesome. Okay, guys, thank you very much, and look forward to seeing you guys come summertime.
Really great, Ryan, in such a short time too. So thanks for all of that.
Thank you.
Okay. Dan, do you have more to add? Or Ann?
No, not at all. Just want to say kudos to Ann for taking all the pictures and sending the all the logistics for the sign itself. So again, to kind of reiterate what Ryan was talking about, if anybody knows of anybody or has an idea on who would be able to do it, go ahead. I mean, we have our contacts, but if you know, hey, let's face it, it's a cost thing too, right? So, and we're looking at different materials. You know, as Ryan said, we're not sure having a piece of plywood is the best material to use out there. So they have newer fabricated items that we can put up, and they have other things. So we're going to be looking at alternative options as far as subcontracting raw materials and using that. So.
Okay. Anything else from the Building Our Community team? Okay, Katie, can you put it back to the gallery view? Okay, thank you. What Ryan was referring to is, we'll have an annual meeting, and our dues originally in 1992 were $20. So the thought would be maybe again, it'd be a vote, but what I'm thinking is that we would raise it to $35 or $40 a year. So you can, tell me what you think about that at some point, but that's, I'm going to guess with inflation that $20 might even be more than that, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. Okay, I just want to kind of summarize what some people are currently already volunteering to do. Mark Michael is doing the Clean Boat program. And we'll have some training in April and working on beetle cage. Chris Franken, Beth Irie, water quality monitoring. Terry Michael is going to coordinate the Loon Ranger program. Did you get the flyer for getting trees and plants and all of that? If you could, are you going to do it? I'm just curious. Okay, I'm seeing, yeah, pretty
I
good
ordered
deal.
some.
Pretty good deal. Dennis Keller and I have agreed to do some history. We need another person or two for history on the lake. So if you have a story, cabin story about something that you think is just interesting. As Ryan has said, I think people like to read stuff like that. And then our next steps would be, we will have probably another Zoom, one, maybe two, between now and May. We'll probably talk about some of the potential projects we're going to do match to the structure that we have. I've been trying to integrate those two things. Want to run it by everybody, see what you're thinking. And then Angie's got a lot to do in terms of this meeting notice, the magnets and so on, and having all our timing to be for an annual meeting. I'm not sure how we're going to have an annual meeting. Will it be in person? Will it be partly Zoom? I've heard from people that do not live close to the lake and they may only come once in the summer and they'd like to be able to join those things by Zoom. We have the technology to do it. So we'll look at that. And then maybe an occasional email with any kind of updates or interesting information. Any final thoughts from anyone before we sign off?
No, just a comment to thank you for organizing these. I know it's a lot of work and it's been really nice to connect and get educated, etc.
Thank you.
Yep, it's this technology just makes this so much easier for everybody. So I guess maybe finally, what's the final thing out of all five? And most of you here have either listened to them or been, actively being able to participate. What has struck you about our lake or about our group?
Going into it, I was kind of that aquatic species. I was kind of like, maybe I'll attend, maybe won't. Coming out of that, I was just fascinated with the plant structure and the architecture and all the topography that we have on our lake. So that just struck me as awe. And as a matter of fact, I printed it out and I'm going to post it, put it on the refrigerator up at the cabin because I thought it was really just a fascinating thing they had. And it makes for good reading.
Yeah. Anything else? Okay, on that note, stay tuned. See you on the lake.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye.